And I saw that they had a hippies collection, a pretty vast hippies collection. And I was like, you know, you really need to have the punk collection too, not just hippies, because San Francisco had a pretty big punk scene. So
that was Avengers vocalist Penelope Houston. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from musicians, photographers, writers, and San Franciscans from all walks of life, telling stories, sharing personal histories, and trying to put into words what makes this city so special. Welcome to episode 36, part 2. In part 1, Penelope talked about coming to San Francisco in 1976 as a student at the Art Institute. She and her friends found a home in the early punk scene at the time, and she became the front person of the band The Avengers. In this podcast, Penelope takes us to the show her band played with the Sex Pistols at Winterland in 1978. After that, she walks through her musical career, including her solo act and another incarnation of The Avengers later on. She ends the episode describing her work at the SF Public Library, where she's putting together a punk rock archive. Here's Penelope.
So then somehow we got invited to come back and play some real shows.
Yeah. Where you're all playing the same song at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we morphed from being an opening band to being a headlining band in about 3 or 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So y'all were good.
Yeah. And we kept writing songs and, working on that. And we were pretty serious about the band. And so that would have been at the end of the school year. Our first shows were in June. And then by July, we were kind of like immersed in the Avengers. That was that's our life.
Yeah. Did you already know, did you go back to school? And did you know one way or the other?
I think I might have gone back one more semester and then decided this is a total waste of time.
Yeah, because now you have this other thing.
Yeah. I have other things to do. So.
Do you want to talk at all about, do you want to talk about the Sex Pistols show, and then do you want to talk about anything between where we are and that, kind of leading up to that?
Before that happened, we went to LA and we were invited by these friends of ours who had this little tiny record label that was putting out singles, and they were called Danger House. Mm-hmm. And they were also friends with Tomato and Tommy from the Screamers. Some of them shared. I think KK Barrett was in the Screamers, and he was also one of the people who started this label. And we went down there to record in October. So between June and October, we were already recording a record.
This is of 77.
Crazy, yeah. And we decided to do 3 songs, and it was We Are the One, I Believe in Me, and Car Crash. And when we went in to record I Believe in Me, I didn't have any written down lyrics. We just had the chorus. So we played the song, and they recorded the band and everything. And then they said, now, do you want to go in and do your vocals? And I said, no, that was it. What I just did is the record. I don't want to do it again. It was like, I was kind of nervous. It was our first time ever in the studio. And it was just like, what was wrong with that? So when you listen to that, you hear off the top of my head, rambling and yelling and yelping. So after that, I always just make up the lyrics to that song. It's always a timely lyric. I just think about what I'm thinking about at that time and go off on a kind of a little rant. And that was really fun. And that came out really fast right after we recorded it. It was amazing.
Still in 77 or?
Yeah, in 77. So it came out later in the same month, I think, in October. And it went all over the world. And we didn't really know that at the time. But people in Europe, or people in England were like, oh, wow, listen to this. So somehow between October and January, when the Pistols came out, Malcolm McLaren had a friend in LA, Rory Johnston, and he was going to be the tour manager for the Pistols, but he also was like somehow having a West Coast Glitter House connection, and trying to find connections for them. And he wanted to manage us. So he got us on the bill with the Pistols at Winterland. And that was the biggest show they ever played, certainly the biggest we'd ever played. By that time, we were playing to 400 or 500 people at the MAB, like basically selling out the MAB. And the Nuns, who had been around before us and had success before us, also got added to that bill, probably because of who they knew in town. And Bill Graham, I think he was kind of like, punk rock. He thought it was really disgusting. He didn't like it at all. And the Nuns were the opening act, and we were the support act. And I remember one of the nuns called me up and said, Penelope, if you want to switch with us, that's okay with us. We're willing to do that. And I was like, thank you very much, Jeff, but I think not. Yeah. I think we'll just stick with what we got here, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So the night came. It was pretty much sold out. There was like almost between 5,000 and 6,000 people there.
How did you at that time regard the Sex Pistols? Were they?
Oh, well, we thought they were great. They had the record out. They seemed kind of jaded already somehow. And then they were on this big tour, but their big tour didn't have any big cities in it until they got to the Winterland. They were playing like weird, Atlanta and Dallas, or I don't know.
I believe they played in Dallas.
Yeah. They skipped L.A. Everyone in L.A. was totally pissed. Everyone in Seattle, they didn't play New York. It was like, what are they doing? So the final show was their biggest show of that tour and their biggest show ever for them. And all the punks came from L.A. and all the punks came from Seattle. Everyone on the West Coast came to this show.
You said 4,000 or 5,000?
5,000 or 6,000.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I never
had the chance to go to Winterland, so I wasn't sure how big it was.
Yeah,
but, oh my
it
God.
was 5 or 6, between like 550.
5,500.
5,500.
It's like a little arena. That's
So the weird thing was, all those people, we were used to playing to people we knew and recognized generally, and there was way more than that there. So there was a lot of people we didn't know who they were. And the Nuns got up and played, and they got spat on so much. I think that there was a huge contingent of people that were just curious about what this punk rock thing was. Mm-hmm. And they heard that you throw things and you spit and you behave very badly. And so that was going on during the Nuns set. And when I went out to the mic during our set, I slipped on the stage. I was covered in spit. And I was so nervous. I was just like, I didn't slip and fall into a bunch of spit, but it was just like, ah. And then at some point during the Nun set, they had this beautiful singer. They had 2 guy singers who were definitely not beautiful, kind of like guys from the Bronx or whatever. They're New York guys, and with leather jackets and like, ah. And then they had this beautiful blonde singer who was from Marin, I think, Jennifer Miro, and she would play the keyboards and sort of not move, very like Marlene Dietrich. Mm-hmm. And somebody said that she got spat on during the set, and she just kept playing. And she didn't move, and I just like picture this loogie going down her face slowly. It's this image in my mind. I don't know if it actually happened or not, but it's a great story. So anyway, when we got up there, we were really rather nervous, and
more about the crowd than the set, or what?
Well, that was the biggest crowd we'd ever
Yeah.
played to, and we saw people we knew, but then they'd disappear, and everyone was getting squeezed out of the crowd. It was so jam-packed in the front. You couldn't really like lock eyes with one of your friends because they'd disappear in the crowd in a second. So we just did it, and I feel like if you watch the set, which is up online, you can see us going from really nervous to like sort of triumphant in the end. And then we got off stage, and the Pistols eventually got on stage, and people started throwing things. They were, yelling They were yelling. They were
Taunting.
Yes, exactly. I think Johnny Rotten said, is this all you got? Like, they were showing cameras, and he was like, this is better. It was crazy.
Did you get to hang out with them backstage at all?
No, they didn't hang out with us. There was a huge crowd of journalists hanging out backstage, and there was beer and there was popcorn, and there was a bunch of punks that had gotten back there, and friends of ours, and the all the opening bands, us and the Nuns. Plus, there was another band that was supposed to play after the Pistols called Negative Trend, and then they didn't let them play. Of course, I think that Malcolm said, "Who's the worst band in town?" And someone said Negative Trend, and they said, "Well, we want them to play after the Pistols," and Bill Graham just wouldn't have it. Also, they had Richard Meltzer in between bands as the MC, and he was like trying to stir up the crowd and using all kinds of profanity. And I saw Bill Graham like strong-arming him off the stage. It was terrifying. Like, for me, I was like a 19-year-old punk. I was just like, what's going on? I guess I was 20 at that point. Anyway, afterwards, it was a real scene in the backstage area. People were sliding around on popcorn and beer flying through the air, and all the photographers were like flashing their bulbs, and we were just kind of getting out of control. But the Pistols did not show up. Then there was an after party, and the Pistols did show up to the after party, and I think I met Paul Cook and Steve Jones, and Sid Vicious OD'd at the after party and went to the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, which is pretty funny. It's like a San Francisco landmark. And he recovered, and they went on their way. So one thing that came out of us playing with Pistols was that Steve Jones decided in his post-Pistol career he was going to be a producer of records, and he wanted to produce our record. So we recorded 4 songs with him in 78, later in 78. And when they were kind of going to be used to try to get the band a deal, and then that didn't happen, and he went off doing some other crazy thing in South America, and we re-recorded some of the vocals on there, and then we were about to put out a record, and our guitar player quit. Greg quit the band, and then we got another guitar player, and it was sort of different sound. The sound was slightly different, and then after a few months of that, we recorded with him actually a couple songs, and then we broke up in the summer of '79, and the record came out within 6 months, and that was a 12-inch 4-song EP on White Noise Records, which is a kind of little-known label. And then after that, Danny and Jimmy put together the Pink album, which is what we're sort of known for, which is a combination of the Danger House, the White Noise, a bunch of other things that we recorded on spec in different places. And
this is after you all broke up?
After we broke up, that came out in 82-ish, and then it had a life of its own. It just sort of took off. And by that time, I'd moved to England. I'd lived in LA for a little while, working with a crazy Dutch filmmaker and the Screamers, and we made a film. And then I moved to England, fell in love, got married, and came back to the U.S. On a visit that was supposed to be like, buy a Dodge Dart, drive across the country, record everything, and with film. And
I was going to say film, right?
Film and video, or film actually, and write songs, and like have this sort of creative, artistic thing across the country, sell the car, go back to England. But
that sounds good to me today.
We never went back. Yeah. The car broke down. We bought it in Seattle. We drove down the coast, and we got as far as LA, and it broke down. And then we ended up back in San Francisco somehow. And I ran into Greg, the original guitar player from the Avengers, and he had all these really weird songs with no, just instrumental. And I was like, I could use some of these. So I decided I would, do this project, and that was in the mid 80s, early 80s. And I started to do songwriting on my own and with Greg and with other people, and started out this whole so-called solo career, and had a bunch of bands and stayed here. And I got a job at the library in 86 maybe as a page. The other building, right,
yeah.
where the Asian Art Museum is. And eventually that solo career blossomed into some success and had a few albums out, and then I got signed to Warner's in Germany, and I started touring over there all the time. And
as Penelope Houston?
As Penelope Houston.
Got it.
And her band, or the first record was called Bird Boys, but I think that was Penelope Houston and the Bird Boys. So, yeah, so then I had a bunch of solo albums out, and I was on this major label, and I had stopped working at the library for a good 7 years, and had a kind of other career, which was awesome. And at the same time, the Avengers were never forgotten. People always wanted to hear that stuff, that material, and were bugging me about it. And the evil company that had put out the Pink album had just stopped paying the band, 8 years earlier, and we were getting into lawsuits with them, and it was a real big mess.
Besides Greg, were you still talking with Danny and?
Yeah, somewhat. Danny had moved to Sweden, so he wasn't that reachable. And Jimmy had gone on to be in Chris Isaac's band.
Okay.
He created that sound, that guitar sound, the twang.
Yeah.
And Jimmy also kind of disappeared from sight of his own volition, basically. Yeah. And so Lookout Records wanted the Avengers to release something, but we couldn't get the Pink album. So we put together all this other recorded material and live material that we found. And then there were 3 songs that we'd never recorded that were good songs. So we went in the studio with Greg and Joel Reeder, who was introduced to me by Billy Joe from Green Day, who I'd done some recording with Joel. And then Danny Panic, the drummer from Screeching Weasel. So the 4 of us went and recorded these 3 songs, and then Lookout put out the record, and they said, "Oh yeah, you have to play the record release party." And I was like, "Okay."
Wow, we have you.
Yeah. And so then once I had done...
And this would be late 80s
what?
now?
No,
late.
We're in the 90s.
Oh, in the 90s. Okay.
Early 90s, yeah.
All right.
So then it was kind of like I tasted... It was just like singing loud again. It was just like singing into the microphone again. It was like, I'm going to be the singer of the Avengers again.
Was the
like
music...
screaming. Like there was something so cathartic about going back to those songs and screaming at the top of my lungs. And I really liked the music too.
The stuff you were doing as a solo artist was a departure, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was quite different.
Okay.
It was kind of like a little Americana, a little country-ish, a little jazz. Yeah. I mean, singer-songwriter had really blossomed at that point and was become quite popular. And I guess that's why I got signed to a major label. And so at the same time, Lookout was putting this out, and it was kind of like this bizarre dual musical front. And then I started working at the library again, and decided to go back to school. I went and got my bachelor's at SF State in printmaking and painting. I went back to painting. Many years passed, and eventually I was working in the library. I got hired up here in special collections. I'd been for about 8 years. I was working basically triage, which is the information desk on the first floor.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah. It's like every person comes in with their question. Like 50% of it is, where's the bathroom? Then another 20% where are the computers, and then some people are like, where's my mind? Like people are talking inside my head. Can I get them out? Like there are bugs in my clothes and stuff. I was like, you mean real bugs, or are we talking psychological bugs?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about listening devices?
I was gonna say.
Yeah. All three of those could come up on any day and ask me that question.
Who hired you up here?
It was Susan Goldstein, the city archivist. It was one of the people that hired me, and Lisa Dunseth was the head of book arts at the time I got hired. So I've been here for about 5 years in this department, and I work with both departments because we only have we share one desk. So every person coming up here, either for book arts or SF history, is going to come to the same desk and talk to people. So we have to learn everything of both departments. And I saw that they had a hippies collection, a pretty vast hippies collection. And I was like, you really need to have the punk collection too, not just hippies, because San Francisco had a pretty big punk scene. So
did you have to do like a formal pitch?
No.
To get that? It was basically what you just said.
Yeah. I was just like, look at Stanford, look at Bancroft, look at, all these different institutions across the country are starting to collect punk. UCLA and Los Angeles Public, Washington, D.C. Public Library, they all have punk collections. I was just like, I'm here. I can help facilitate this. And you can have the Avengers Penelope Houston collection. And it's going to be gigantic because I have a lot of stuff. Saved a lot of stuff. So we talked about it, and then I started talking to people in the community and seeing who was interested in bringing stuff. And then you have gigantic collections like V-Val from Search and Destroy sold a huge collection to UCLA for a huge amount of money. And we don't have money,
Right.
We're just living on the generosity of donors. But we've gotten some really cool stuff, and we're getting more cool stuff all the time. Every time we get, I did a podcast with SF Chronicle, and suddenly people were like contacting me, like, "Oh, bring some stuff in." So it's been super exciting. People sending me photos and flyers and stuff. Elaine Vestal sent a huge collection of photos that were her own photos, and then flyers. New Youth Productions brought me their collection of, including New Youth Productions was this group of basically teenagers back in '78 who decided to incorporate and become a nonprofit and raise money to start their own club that they could go to, because I think the MAB was 18 and over. And they wanted to create this whole space that would support the audience and the artists. And
like Gilman, but way before.
Pre-Gilman, yeah, it was exactly. I wonder what's happening with Gilman's collection. Well, they're still using it,
yeah.
Probably. So I kind of was trying to limit this collection to 75 to 85.
Okay.
The early stuff. But when people come in, like I had Alfie from the Chatterbox, who ran the Chatterbox in the 90s. She has every single flyer they ever had, all their booking information, just a ton of stuff. She brought it to me. And I was like, thank you. We'll definitely take this. Mm-hmm. So we're not really limited to that time period, but that's my focus. That's what I know the most about. Anybody, any member of the public or a researcher, whoever, can come up to the 6th floor of the main library and ask to see things from the punk collection. The punk collection has not been processed yet, so it's a little harder to get to see what we have, but I did create a kind of a finding aid. I'm not an archivist, although I play one on podcasts. But I created a finding aid, and people can look through that and see what they want to look at. We have in our reading rooms in the San Francisco History Center, it's a secure room. People have to hand over their backpacks and bags. And then when they're looking at material, they have to give their ID that we hold while they're looking at the material. So things don't walk away. And if you want to look at actual photographs, you have to come in on the days the photo desk is open, which is Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So it's always good to call ahead to the history department and talk to the people about what you want to see, when is a good time to see it. The Avengers are still playing. We are going to go on a tour with Stiff Little Fingers across the U.S. Huge tour. It's
Not in a Dodge Dart, please.
Not in a Dodge Dart, but like in a Dodge van. I don't know. We'll be in a van. And that's going to be 28 shows or something insane like that. It's about 5 weeks. And it'll be this October. We'll definitely play every city where people are hearing this.
That was Penelope Houston. Check back next week when we'll have Patrick O'Malley, another local musician, on the show. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. All 85 episodes are up on our website, storiedsf.com. You can also help support this project there by going to our store page and checking out the different pledge levels. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on all the stuff we do. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show. And if you have any comments, suggestions of who should be on the show, or you just want to share whatever's on your mind, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.